And welcome to this week's episode of Two Guys on Politics with co-hosts former Illinois Congressman Bill Lipinski and myself. Bill is a columnist and writer with the Southwest News newspaper group, and I also write for the same newspaper and also for Arab News in the Middle East. It's August 30th, 2025, and this is season 4, episode 24 of Two Guys on Politics. Our website is twoguysonpolitics.com. We got a bunch of topics today. We're going to cover the whole gamut of everything. In segment one, we're going to kind of focus on President Trump, although I don't know how easy that is to focus on him. His tariffs have been ruled illegal by a federal appeals court. And Bill and I were talking, what does fentanyl have to do with tariffs? I don't know. Fentanyl is a serious problem. Trump is looks like he's gonna go to war with Venezuela soon. He's sending the military there. And then in his conversations he had with Zelensky, that whole Ukraine peace process just totally collapsed. We don't hear anything. He was positioning that to be the basis for a Nobel Peace Prize. Due process and arrests and expulsions for those visa issues, that's been blocked by the federal court. And the CDC director he said he wanted to fire, that was fired, says she refuses to leave, that the firing is illegal. And then in segment two, we're going to talk about the Minneapolis shooting, which is really kind of tragic. We'll try to get into more serious stuff there. And although all is serious, then we'll talk a little bit about the $1.5 billion budget shortfall that Chicago faces and what that means for suburbanites. Trump's backing down on fighting with the National Guard, housing ICE at Great Lakes Naval Training, and Trump is also blocking foreign leaders from coming to the UN meeting in September, Bill. So we got so much to talk about, and then I'll end segment two with a little update on the prayer tent battle for Muslims at O'Hare Airport. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be right back with our discussion right after these messages. And welcome back. I'm Ray Hanania,
And I'm Bill Lipinski.
and this is Two Guys on Politics. Our first segment here, Trump tariffs. We've heard so much about it. It was going to make America rich again, apparently. But now the federal appeals court is saying, nah, you illegally imposed the tariffs. The basis for doing it was wrong. I guess that there's some law that Congress passed called the IEEP, which is allowed, which you're allowed to do if to impose sanctions. It's called the International on foreign countries. It's called the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, IEEPA. And what Trump did was, it's a problem. He's turning the tariffs with these foreign countries into a threat to the America, and he's using this IEEPA, the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, to raise those trumps on all the countries and force it to negotiate. A federal judge, I guess, this week on Friday, yesterday, ruled that it was illegal, but he allowed him to keep it in place while they have this hearing. But it looks like they're going to overturn most of his tariffs. What is that? What if they overturn all these tariffs, Bill, after all the publicity, all the threats to Russia, all the threats to China, all the threats to Europe? How does that make America look, you think?
Well, it probably helps Trump get the Nobel Peace Prize
Think?
because all these countries won't want to go to war with us if they no longer have to pay the big tariffs that supposedly were putting on them. Uh, Ray, I think that the chickens are coming home to roost on Trump.
Right.
Uh, the court here says that his tariffs are illegal. Number one, because a tariff is a tax. A tax can only be imposed by the Congress of the United States. The House and the Senate has to vote in favor of it. He just totally bypassed them. So the court is saying he was wrong. He's got to get rid of these. I'm sure it's going to go to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court, I think, has been very reasonable and rational in regards to many of the things that Trump has wanted to do. And they have ruled a logical way, a way that is in concert with this being a democratic republic and not a country to be run by one man. So I'm hopeful that these tariffs, which I'm not necessarily opposed to tariffs, because I think that many of these countries are ripping us off by what goes on as far as trade. But he went about it the wrong way,
Right.
as he usually does. He used a sledgehammer instead of a scalpel, to take care of this stuff. He's teed off India, who we were getting close to, and it was advantageous to us since we're not that close to China. But now he's made them mad. They got a 25% tariffs imposed upon many of their things. And what happened to the tariffs he was going to impose upon Russia?
Right.
Nothing.
Yeah.
His buddy Putin got on American soil, lied to him about wanting to end the war, wanted to meet with Zelensky. All of that has gone away. And what has Trump done about it? He's just turned his back. He's looking the other way. So I'm not surprised at the court. Thank heavens we have courts in this country. Thank heavens that they try to follow the Constitution as much as possible.
Yeah, it just I don't understand this guy. I mean, it's been 8 months now that he's been in office, and all we have is chaos. I don't think we have, nothing's been solved. No wars have been ended. 8 months. He said day one. Remember, he's president day one. Everything was going to be solved in day one. He knows the art of negotiations, he said. His book that he was promoting from the White House when he first got into office. It's really disturbing that he's so willing to risk everything by ignoring the rule of law. In other
Absolutely.
words, he's just not following what the law is, and he does whatever he wants, and he says, hey, maybe they'll stop me, maybe they won't. But now he's saying that if you block my tariffs, it's going to unleash, and he's gaslighting us, unleash economic chaos in America. This is the president who's predicting economic chaos in our country if he doesn't get his way. And there's a good chance he's not going to get his way. My big worry about tariffs hasn't been about the economic chaos that he's creating, but what impact is that going to have on our already oppressed wallets? Our income is shrinking. The costs of products are increasing. The size of products are decreasing. So we're paying not only higher prices, but double for for products because they reduce the size of a product now and increase the price. It's just horrible. And we're not getting, I don't think, a good economic picture from the media. The media seems unfocused too. They're all over the place. It's kind of like, and I learned to really like Jane Byrne after she left office. She turned out to be not a bad person. She wasn't a great mayor, but she was a decent person. But when Jane Byrne was mayor, she wreaked havoc on the city of Chicago for 4 years. And it's Trump is really kind of doing the same thing, I think, don't you think?
Yeah, well, let me just comment on Jane Byrne. All I can say is that uh, I knew Jane. Jane wasn't a bad person, but she was a terrible mayor.
Right.
Although I think the city of Chicago is very fortunate now. They actually have a mayor who probably is worse than Jane Byrne was.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about Mayor Brandon Johnson in the
Yes.
second segment because there are a lot of problems there. We talk about the problems at the national level, but it's really at the local level too. Now, with this tariffs. Now, if we go back and look at all the tariffs, I don't know if you remember when Trump first announced we got to do something about tariffs by saying if we don't do something about tariffs, we won't be able to stop the influx of fentanyl, this opioid drug, into our country, which is destroying parts of our population, has been a big burden on our policing, has fueled the drug and crime problem in this country. Fentanyl is one of the worst drugs out there. I've never been able to see and make the connection between how his tariffs are going to stop this fentanyl thing. It sounds like he just throws big headlines at it and says, oh, fentanyl, we must need tariffs. I don't know why, but if Trump says tariffs and fentanyl go together, the MAGA people just say, yeah, let's do it. Well, did, did you ever understand the connection between fentanyl and tariffs, Bill?
No, I think it was just an excuse on his part to impose tariffs on countries that he wanted to impose tariffs on. Now, like I've said, I have nothing against tariffs, but you've got to do it in a reasonable, rational way. You have to do it with a scalpel, not with a sledgehammer. Yes, we are being ripped off by a number of countries, but the way he's gone about it has been, well, it has resulted in chaos internationally. And I think the chaos is getting worse and worse in this country because of it. I think and I hope that the courts will roll back all of these tariffs. And if he wants to impose them, he should do it the right way. He should go through Congress. That way, all Americans will have an opportunity to have some kind of input. Remember, this is a democratic republic. It's not a country that should be run by one man. It has never been that way, and we shouldn't start now.
That's something we're going to be talking about in a minute. But the interesting thing about this fentanyl and tariff issue, and it's more about tariffs, is that if the courts, uh, the ruling that his tariffs are illegal, that's going to cause a major embarrassment for the United States with countries like China. He used tariffs to beat up on China. He used tariffs to beat up on other countries. They're going to be laughing at us, after this. I mean, we once were the leader of the free world. Now we're the laughing stock of the free world, because of a lot of things that he's doing. And it sounds like we're being mean to Trump. There are some things we like and don't like. There are other presidents that have done crazy things too that I don't always agree with, but it just seems like he can't get a grasp on anything so far that's successful. I haven't seen one successful thing he's done in the past 8 months. And it's 8 months. It's starting to concern me. He only has 3 years, at least that's what the law says. But let's shift over to this.
Well, let me just say
Go
there,
ahead.
Ray, the things that he has accomplished are things he has done by executive order.
Mm,
And other than that one bill that he passed, the big, beautiful bill,
right,
that was done legislatively, that was done properly. The House, the Senate passed it, he signed it into law. But all the other things that he's had any kind of success with has simply been through an executive order.
right.
Many of these things have been repealed because he didn't have the executive power to do it. And, he has done a number of things I like, and I've said it many times, but I no longer can accept those things that I like about him because he has just created, to use your words, which are excellent words, too much chaos in
Right.
this country. And he thinks that he is the sole authority on everything. And he's finding out that that is not the case.
Now, one of the reasons I liked Trump was I thought he was going to take crime seriously. But as I look at it, I'm not really sure how serious he's taking crime. Now, the federal government has authority over Washington, D.C. I'm not sure I believe all the statements that his officials and cabinet members say that crime has decreased in half since Trump imposed the National Guard on Washington, D.C. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if Washington, D.C. is a safer place than it was. It's always been a high crime area. When I've traveled there, I've always been worried about, being in Washington, D.C. Sometimes you can't just walk around that place without worrying about something happening. Um, Now he said that he was going to go after cities like Chicago, but it seems like he's backing down, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
What's he going to do with Chicago? What's the status of the we're going to eliminate confront crime and bring safety to Chicago dictate that Trump made
I
last
think
week, two
I
weeks
think
ago?
that he realizes that he really does not have the authority, the power to bring police into the city of Chicago. Okay. So what he's doing is beefing up the ICE agents. And he says he's going to make a big push on getting rid of illegal aliens out of this sanctuary city that we have here in the city of Chicago. Well, that's fine. Let's see how successful he'll be in doing that. I hope he's successful. I don't like all these illegal aliens we have, but I would like to see it restricted to the last couple of years because people that have been here 5, 6, 7 years, they've got jobs, they have businesses. I think they are in a positive way contributing to society. So let's hold it to all these people that in the last couple of years of the Biden administration rushed across our border with no reason whatsoever other than to find an economic place where they could do better.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, by the way, Bill. Uh, 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 to allow illegal aliens who have been here more than, let's say, 3 years. Let them, if they come forward, they identify themselves, they have no police record, no problems. Yeah, then maybe we should, and because they've insinuated themselves into the economy, the work process, and everything, maybe we should figure out a way to help them because the idea of trying to get rid of everybody is going to, first of all, is going to be impossible. It's not
Absolutely.
the whole problem was that they got in and it's been overwhelming and you just can't get rid of all those people that are illegal. And I'm not saying I think it's good that people should be allowed to come into this country illegally. They shouldn't. We should figure out a way to tighten and stop that. But we haven't been able to do that. So maybe we address it this way, a good compromise. Those people that have made contributions, let's help them become citizens. Make them follow the law. You have to learn English. You have to know the Constitution. Bring them into the process. Make them become Americans, not just citizens, because being a citizen isn't just enough. And then those illegal aliens that have been in for like the recent 3 years, we should arrest them. We should kick them out and we shouldn't give up on this whole thing because I think that among all these illegal aliens are criminals
Absolutely.
that have come in. I mean, it's not just, good people that have come in here for shelter and sanctuary. A lot of criminals can walk in. Just listen, if a regular person from Mexico or Central America can walk through the border and come into this country illegally, imagine how much more easy it is for a criminal who has a lot of money and organization to come into this country. How easy it would be for them to do that. It's just amazing to me that that is the real threat that is getting missed here. Nobody's really addressing, that these illegal aliens among them are criminals, and we need to separate the two and deal with them differently. And it becomes very emotional too, though.
Well, I think that one of the problems we're having right now is that there has been a lot of negative publicity on rounding up people and shipping them out of the country.
Right.
So once again, it's the way that the Trump administration is going about something. Once again, they're using a sledgehammer when they should be a lot less severe, much more, they should investigate things a lot more because what's happening, the news media has turned against most of this. Once the news media does it, they start convincing the citizenry that they are opposed to it. I saw a poll the other day where now 52% of all Americans are opposed to deporting these people. Now, if you go back 4, 5, 6 months, there was probably only 20% that opposed it.
Right.
I believe it's because of the way the Trump administration has handled the situation. Once again, they have hurt their own position and the position of most real Americans by doing the way they have done it with deporting people.
Yeah, he's undermining his goal of
Absolutely.
closing the border by the really just the sloppy, emotional way that he just blurts out things without any law or research, behind it. Um, we have a few minutes left on this segment, but we wanted to talk about a couple other things. This Trump is sending warships to the coast of Venezuela. That is, it's disturbing to me that's happening. It's kind of disturbing because it could start a war. And we've looked at, that we've always thought that we don't like Maduro, the president of Venezuela, but he's elected there. I know that they had an election. He rejected the man that we're told actually won, and kept power. He's a dictator in South America, but how much of a threat is Maduro and Venezuela to the United States that we have to send our military down there if in fact that's why our military is going down there? What do you think of Venezuela with all the problems that we have today? Is Venezuela that big of a problem for us that we
No, I don't think it's a problem for us whatsoever. But you had mentioned prior to us going on the air
Yes.
about think it's possible, and other people think it's possible that he wants to create a war with Venezuela so that he'll be able to stay in power.
Yes.
Zelensky hasn't had any elections in the Ukraine since the war started. So that gave Trump the idea, well, he won't have to have any elections here if we're at war. Well, I hope he reads history because in 1940, we were about to go to war and Franklin Roosevelt held the election. 1944, we were in the middle of the Second World War. We were fighting the Germans, we were fighting the Japs. Okay? We still held an election. So don't tell me simply because we're in a war someplace with some country, that we shouldn't hold an election. Once again, it would be a violation of our Constitution. It'd be a violation of the American way of life if we allowed that to happen.
Yeah, and it's a violation of ethics and morality to start a war just to have an excuse to stay in office. I think there was a report about how Zelensky and Trump had in their conversations in that failed peace effort that Trump touted as the answer to all the problems in Ukraine. Turned out it wasn't. He asked Zelensky, "How come you haven't had to have your election?" And Zelensky basically told him, "Well, we're in the middle of a war. You don't have an election in the middle of a war. When you're deep in war, you have to have consistency in leadership, and you just follow through. If he were doing a bad job, they'd remove him and put somebody else in charge. They wouldn't turn to an election to do that." And I think Trump said, "Oh, if I had a war," he said something to the effect, "Oh, so if I had a war, I could probably stay in office longer than 4 years." And then all of a sudden, the next week, we see him sending a guided missile cruiser, the USS Lake Erie, and fast attack submarines down toward the Caribbean to confront Venezuela. I'm thinking he's going to attack Venezuela, start a war because he thinks Venezuela's weak, but he'll be able to have a war. But it's still he's only been in office 8 months. If I were going to do this, if I were as crazy as the president, I would have waited till 2 years from now when we were a year away from the election and then start a war and then suspend the election. And I think that's what Trump's going to do. But he's 79 years old. In 2 years, he's going to be 81, maybe 82 years old. We're really in a bad situation. People might be laughing at this thought that he might do that, but knowing Trump, this is a real possibility. He could do
What would we attack Venezuela for?
well, fentanyl and tariffs.
Okay, okay.
In other words, and I'm joking, Bill, I have no idea what we'd attack Venezuela for. Oh, drugs are coming into the country. They're coming into the country from every country. We're going to attack the
Absolutely.
country. I think Venezuela looks like an opportune, let's start a problem, build it up over the next 2 years, get into a war, and I'll use that as a basis to stay in office. It sounds unbelievable, but given everything that we've seen, and the weak, basis for a lot of his decisions that are not standing up to the rule of law, they're being thrown out. It's not likely that I think it could happen.
Well, I hope you're wrong, but I agree with you. I think it could very well happen. Lord only knows what Trump is going to do next.
And then,
He is such a terrible disappointment to me. He's such an embarrassment to the American people, an embarrassment of America for the rest of the world, I think.
yeah, I do too. And one final little mention, this is like shame upon shame, embarrassment upon embarrassment. The White House says that the new CDC director is fired. Susan Monarez, I guess is the name. She refused to adopt Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s stance on vaccination policies, that she's fired, but she says, I'm not leaving. And I legally I have the right to to stay there because you haven't done it the right way. These are, whatever we think of Trump's policies, right or wrong, you still have to do things in a smart, proper manner. And it doesn't look like he even wastes his time on what the process is to do things. He just
Well,
does it.
but this isn't this woman one of his appointees?
Yes, and he wants to get rid of her because Kennedy doesn't like working with her because he doesn't believe that COVID exists. He doesn't think you should get vaccinations. And there's talk that we have a huge COVID outbreak in this country again, coronavirus, but we're not addressing it. That concerns me that there hasn't been enough written about it. And I have heard of different people getting the COVID, infection. And we saw how many people died during the first wave of this disease that spread across the country. So it is troubling.
Yes, I think that's Trump's real name, Trouble.
Troubling, probably. All right, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll get into segment two, talk a little bit about the tragedy of this Minneapolis shooting and some of the other shootings we've seen. And then also the challenges facing the Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson, and what's happening there. We're going to be right back right after these messages. I'm Ray Hanania.
I'm Bill Lipinski, and this is Two Guys on Politics.
And one of the topics, Bill, is this Minneapolis shooting that occurred at the church of a Catholic school in Minneapolis on Wednesday. Police said the shooter, who died by suicide after the attack, had a fascination with mass killings. I think it was a woman, wasn't it? What do we know about another mass shooting?
That's very interesting because some channels that I saw the story on referred to the shooter as a he. Other ones refer to the shooter as a her
Yeah.
because it was transgender. Now, I don't know which way it went, okay? I don't know if it went from male to female or female to male, but obviously there was a problem with the sexual identity of the individual who did the mass shootings. Right? I don't really know what we do about these mass shootings. I'm all for confiscating all the guns in the country
Yes.
and only allowing the military and perhaps the police to have guns. That's unrealistic. That is not going to happen. But there has to be some way that we can cut down on what is going on with these mass shootings. Now, once upon a time, we did ban assault weapons, but the ban was only a temporary one. Why? I do not remember. I was there. I voted for the ban, but I guess that's all we could pass at the time. And it reduced murders considerably. I mean, these assault weapons, all you do is pull the trigger back once, and the bullets keep flying out until you release it. And that is, I believe, what killed and injured most of these other people that were in the church going to mass from the Catholic grammar school in Minneapolis.
Yeah, and apparently the mother of the shooter, a man or woman or transgender or whatever, and you know that's going to be an issue. Like, why are we picking on transgenders? Okay, so
Sure,
he's a shooter and he killed kids and wounded 18 other people, but you know the big outcry is going to be, why do we even mention the fact that the person is a transgender? Well, you know what? If it's a male or a female or a transgender, I think they should be identified. But the
absolutely.
mother is, she went out and got a criminal defense attorney because it sounds like she doesn't want to cooperate with the police in terms of what her child, male or female, did. It just is, I agree with you. This is terrible. You know, just taking away weapons isn't enough. Restricting guns and even like calls to impose tougher penalties on people who use guns and violence. This shooter committed suicide, so whatever the laws were would never have made any difference anyway. This person just went out and killed innocent kids. It just makes no sense. You know,
Well, the things that he wrote in his diary, which half of it seems to be in Russian, according to what I've been reading and hearing on radio and TV. I mean, he obviously had, or she had, very, very severe psychological problems. And you would think that somebody along the line would have recognized this and tried to get this individual some help. Now, I understand his mother doesn't even, they don't live together. They haven't lived together for a number of years. So I don't think there's any way that the authorities can come back at her for not having done something. But, who knows? And it seems like any one of these mass shooters wind up killing themselves at the end
right.
of, after they kill as many people as they can, they take one more life, and that's their own life.
Yeah.
So the punishment there, they punish themselves, if you want to call it punishment.
Yeah, it's she had a rifle, a shotgun, and a handgun, and she was just firing. He or she were firing bullets like crazy. They're trying to get the information to find out what happened. But you know, if this person had mental health issues, it's a statement on the fact that we don't, you know, we're cutting back health
Yes.
services. Trump is cutting back health services to the people who need it the most. And yeah, it'd be great if they could pay for their own health, but they usually can't.
No,
So,
absolutely.
I
Well,
mean,
most of them don't want it. Most of them don't realize that
right.
there's anything wrong with them.
Right. I have a friend that was sick, and every once in a while I stop to make sure she's okay at her care center. But there was a time where she was supposed to take medication, and her big problem was she didn't take the medication because she thought she was okay. And when she stopped taking the medication, she actually had these bouts of psychosis and schizophrenia. And you know, she wouldn't take any medication then. So you're right. People who are sick, who take the medication, feel that they're good and they don't need the medication. But we're not doing enough to, it's not just helping them, but we're helping our society,
Absolutely.
helping them. And we don't do enough, I think.
See, I think that these people have to be institutionalized. Now, they can be looked after, they can be given their medicine. If the medicine improves their mind, their understanding, their reality, then they can be released once again back into society and perhaps become productive members of society. But there's no way you're going to help them if you're simply giving them medicine. They're still living on their own. As you said, this friend
Right.
of yours didn't take the medication
Right.
that was prescribed.
Yeah, no, I agree. You got to do more than, even just providing the medication. And we can't abandon those programs. And I think it was a mistake on Trump's part. They're just trying to save money so they can spend money. I really believe that Trump's policy is to help his wealthiest friends and himself, because he allegedly is wealthy, although there's some question about whether he really has the money he claims he has. But and talking about money, now we can shift to the one place where crime and money are always a problem, and that's the city of Chicago. Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson says the city faces a $1.5 billion budget shortfall. And he announced it on Friday, and he said that they took the property tax off the table. And you know what that means, Bill. If they don't raise property taxes in Chicago, they're going to come after suburbanite, the money that you and I make as suburbanites, and make us pay for the problems, because that's what they do in Chicago. They use their clout in Springfield and their influence to get what they want, to pay for the things that they need by pooling city and suburban money together. But the problem is that a lot of the property taxes come from the suburbs where they take these state taxes, or a lot of the taxes that they collect come from the suburbs, and the state uses those taxes and gives them to Chicago. And I think that's a mistake. I think if Chicago has a $1.5 billion budget deficit, then the people living in Chicago need to increase their own property taxes and take care of it. Why should the suburbs have anything to do with that?
Well, the suburbs shouldn't have anything to do with it as far as I'm concerned. But Ray, you answer me this question. You're the mayor of Chicago. Ray Hanania is elected mayor of Chicago. The school board is in place. You have the opportunity to replace all the members of the school board with people that you want to see on that school board. So you get rid of all the existing people. You put people on the school board. You appoint them. They should be loyal to you. They should understand your position. They should realize what you want to do. How do you lose a vote underneath those circumstances of your own hand-picked members? To me, it simply shows what a poor administrator and politician the present mayor is. Jane Byrne was bad, but Jane Byrne was bad because she changed her mind continually.
Right.
I think one of the problems we have with Johnson is he doesn't know when to cut his losses. He doesn't know when to change positions. He gets a fixed position, and he always talks about these areas of the city that have not had the proper development. Well, how much does one area of the city owe another area of the city? Once again, we have to realize that people have to stand up and improve their own neighborhood. Yes, you can give them some help, but really the only way those neighborhoods are ever going to get straightened out is if the people who live in them rise up and say, no more crime, and we're going to rebuild our neighborhood. That's what has to happen.
Well, and part of the problem is historical politics, where the machine has rewarded its supporters with huge pensions, to the point where this year the city of Chicago has to make a $2.8 billion pension payment, to cover the cost of all these pensions. If I were the mayor, this is what I would do. Every agency in the city of Chicago, every government agency, I would cut in half. And I would force these government agencies, with the exception of the police and fire, I would cut every agency in half, and force them to find ways to save money, because they're spending recklessly. They're growing recklessly and obviously not producing results for all the money that these governments and departments and agencies are getting. The whole city of Chicago, I would cut back the pensions. I would cut back, you have to cut back spending in order to get a handle on spending. If this were your house or my house, and I faced a $3,000 mortgage payment that I couldn't pay, I'd be looking at how I'm spending the money that I do have now so I could pay the mortgage to keep the house. I mean,
Right.
that's
Oh,
what every family does every day. We make a decision on how do we save money to pay the essential bills. And maybe we don't go to a movie, or maybe we don't go out to eat, and maybe we don't eat a steak every day. Maybe we just eat, rice and spaghetti for a few days. Do you know what I'm saying? That's what a
yes,
good
I do.
mayor needs to do. But the mayor of Chicago doesn't have the support, and he doesn't have the confidence of the public or the members of the Chicago City Council, who, for the first time, really have found an opportunity to exercise their own will. And unfortunately, their exercising their own will hasn't resulted in much good positive
No,
progress either.
very true.
It's caused a lot of problems. So Chicago's going through a problem. I'm just worried about, I'm already burdened in the suburbs by high taxes, by high costs. I don't need another reason to have to pay more of my money to help the city of Chicago. I'd rather see the city of Chicago go bankrupt and start from the beginning. Have a federal judge come in and impose like an economic order on the city to change things. That if that's what it takes to get it in order, that's what they need to do. It has to be drastic.
But you realize, Ray, by the position you're taking and the position I'm taking, we're going to be called racist.
Oh yeah, of course,
As
because
it's an
well,
African American mayor, and many of the cabinet officers are African Americans. So any kind of criticism means that we're racist,
well, the
which,
truth is though, Bill, the population of the city is, I think, almost 38%, 38% white, 44% black, and maybe about 20% Hispanic. There's still a big white population. I don't know how that's racist, to say that, that we want to help all the people there. But you're right. He's black. He'll use, some people will use that to defend him. But that's why I think you got to step in and do everything at once across the board. The city needs to be declared bankrupt. It needs to be put into just the way you would take a company that goes bankrupt. You put it under the control of some overseer to ensure that things are done right, that makes decisions not based on emotion or race or favoritism, but on, hey, I got two bills to pay. Which one am I going to pay? The most important, rather than the one that isn't as important to stay alive. So, yeah, it is a tough decision, but I think in the end, that's the future that Chicago faces.
and Ray, what does it mean when the president continually talks about the disinvestment that was made in communities in the city of Chicago? Can you tell me what he means by that?
White flight.
White flight. Okay. All right.
But it isn't just white flight, African American flight from the city.
Absolutely.
You see a lot of blacks moving out of the city. When you start making money and you start realizing that your money can take you out of a crime zone, they all move to the suburbs, regardless of what your race is. Whites were richer before, but now you see wealth spreading out to African Americans, to Hispanics, and Asians. A lot of Asians are doing very, very well. And where do they
Definitely.
take their money? They go to the suburbs. That flight it's a dollar flight. It's no longer a white flight anymore. It's an economic flight.
I think that's a very good point.
Yeah, and I think that it's just terrible that it takes courage to do the right thing, but it's also a little controversial, and it's sometimes it's harder not to do the right thing. I mean, it's harder to do the right thing and easier to just say no, that's racist. We're not going to do it.
Right.
So the answer won't get done. All
I
right.
like your answer, though. Disinvestment in certain communities is white flight.
Yeah.
That's very good. Very good.
Yeah, it's actually, and it's really, we should be looking at economic flight. That's really what we're seeing today. It's no longer white flight, it's economic. Even back in the 60s, when we lived through white flight, it really was an economic flight. People didn't leave as much because they were afraid of black people. These white people that fled the southeast side where I lived in 1968, did it because they were told by realtors that they were going to lose the money on their homes. And if you
Absolutely.
don't sell right away, you're going to lose 40, 50% of the value of their home. So they fled. And they did it because they said, look, I don't know whether it's true or false, but I can't risk losing the money in my home. So I better sell it as fast as I can. And I think that's what happened. All right. We down to the last. I did a column this week. We're almost down to the last 4 more minutes of this.
Sure,
This
go ahead.
past week, I got a call from an Uber Lyft driver who happened to be an Arab Muslim. And he said, 3 years ago, we went to the city. We asked them, hey, we're Uber and Lyft drivers. They have a staging parking lot that's about a mile or a half mile from O'Hare Airport. They have to sit there all day waiting for a ride call. So they get there at 5 in the morning. And sometimes they'd have to sit there till 10 o'clock at night, depending on how busy, the Uber and Lyft calls are. And then if they do one ride, they go back there and they'd sit. They'd end up sitting probably like 8 hours. And this one guy who happened to be Muslim said, I'm Muslim. I'm not a crazy religious person, but I do pray when I need to pray, which is early in the morning, 3 times during the day, and at night, and I needed a place to pray. So it turned out of the 200 drivers that parked there, 70 of them were Muslim. And they went to the city and they said, hey, can we set up a tent for ourselves out of our own pocket? We'll pay for it. It'll be on a part of the staging parking lot that's grass in the corner. It doesn't take up any parking spaces, doesn't block the roads or anything. We'll pay for the tent. We'll decorate it. You guys inspect it. We'll put some electricity in there so that we have some light, some heat. They're only, if you sit there, by the way, there are only 7 porta potties. So, for 200 people, that's terrible that they get cleaned out only every few days. So it's a mess there if that's our new transportation system answer to what's needed at O'Hare Airport. So the city said 3 years, yeah, go ahead, do it. So they set it up, they put the tent up, they put a wood floor, they put this, and it's not just a small tent. I think it's like about 30 feet by 30 feet in an unused grassy area covered by wood. They put prayer rugs, they have electricity, they even have a little air conditioner on the side of the tent, but it's all paid for by these drivers. They all donated money and they bring food there, but they put the food on tables outside, and everybody is allowed to go into this tent, including Christians and Jewish drivers who may want to find a place to relax or pray on their own. There's a prayer area where they can pray, and then they all get together. The Arabs, they love to cook. So they bring food over there and they share the food with all the drivers, anybody who wants to come there. Now, I can imagine how this could get out of control. But last week, a inspector, I don't know what the problem was, whether it was Gaza, or the debate or whatever, but he started yelling at him. He said, I'm going to get this tent shut down. He's a deputy inspector for the Department of Aviation for the city of Chicago. And he said, I'm going to shut this tent down. And of course, I'm the only Arab American journalist in the Midwest who writes about this stuff. So the Muslim called me and I wrote a story about it. And people can go to Hanania.com to read those 2 stories. And I laid out the story just the way I told it to you in my column. Then I reached out to the city. They didn't respond, but when the column got published and it got a big response, then they responded and they said, "Hey, we're looking for a more permanent solution to the need to help serve these Uber drivers who have to sit there all day because they recognize it's a problem." But I said, "Well, the issue isn't just a permanent solution. It's somebody was threatening to tear their tent down. What are you doing about that?" Now that they didn't want to answer. They haven't got an answer. But this is typical of today's Chicago, city of Chicago. They don't address the issues properly. And they just think they can just blow it off and let it go away. And there's just too much going on. This could have been answered properly. I don't know how you feel about if you're a driver. Should you have a place to pray if that's something
Certainly you should.
you do?
Absolutely. If they were Christians, and they wanted to pray, I'm sure that the city administration would go along with them. Now, I'm a Catholic. I believe in the Catholic religion. I'm all for that religion. I'm a Christian, but I believe that, everyone that believes in a religion, believes in a God, should have the opportunity to pray. And I think I have read the stories that you have written. I have read some other stories about it. I think that this is severe discrimination against Muslims because of the fact that right now there's a war going on between many Muslims and Israel. And I think, unfortunately, this is a carryover effect, and we're persecuting these people that have the Muslim religion. And I hope it can stop. And it'd be nice if our mayor would really step in and do something about it. But he seems to be very much like our president. If the situation gets hard, he turns his back and moves in a different direction.
Well, they can't do anything. City council can't do anything for at least another week because half the members of the city council are on a free trip to Israel paid for by AIPAC. They've sent a lot of them to Israel to go to the front lines and to influence their view on what's happening over there. That's another whole different issue. Bill, anyway, that's it for Two Guys on Politics. I'm Ray Hanania,
I'm Bill Lipinski.
and we hope you enjoyed the show this week. And you can always pick up our episodes on YouTube at twoguysonpolitics.com. Have a great day. Thanks, Bill.
Take care.